The second thing I wanted to encourage for you guys to do when you read about the writing process that students go through for a longer term piece, you want to, of course, especially for students who struggle with reading and literacy, to scaffold that process for them. There's a lot of resources out there in terms of sentence starters, graphic organizers students can do to plan their writing. But what really can underscore to a student that reading-writing connection that we as educators and we as readers and writers see is to think about those scaffolds not just as writing strategies, but reading and writing strategies. So if you have your students doing a KWL with a reading, then you also want them, when they move on from the reading to a writing response to that, they can create a KWL as a graphic organizer. So the K being what they already know, the W being the what they want to know is their brainstorming, the L being what they've learned, that's their evidence that they use to support the main idea of what they're writing. And then I also had a teacher who taught me KWL Plus. When you get to the end of a writing project, you still have some new questions you've come up with, some new big, larger connections, and that can be your plus. That can go into the conclusion of your piece. In the same way, you can have students both outline a writing assignment, and many of us grew up writing outlines before we wrote, but then you can also have them take that same structure and have that be a reading strategy where they outline the same thing that they're reading. The more that you can use reading strategies, some of the comprehension strategies and graphic organizers that Graves mentions and that are out there on the internet, the more you can use them both as reading and writing strategies, the more students can see how interdependent these two meaning-making processes are in your classroom. I also wanted to touch on what Graves talks about with genre, with another special emphasis for the secondary teachers. This is your chance to get students to see how writing is an important skill specific to your discipline. So I encourage you to have students start by reading what writing looks like in your discipline, and so this may be magazine articles about science, this may be some maybe not scholarly, if you're teaching at a younger grade, maybe not scholarly writing about history, but the way history is covered in a magazine as opposed to, say, a textbook. Have students start listing out what are some of the conventions, what are some of the rules that they notice that writers use when they're writing history, when they're writing science, and then have students go back and try to write like a historian, use those same rules and conventions in their own writing in your discipline. And then my final comment is about feedback. I would say that one thing that is often prevents teachers from having students write as much as students need to write is that it's very hard to give feedback, but we want to give students meaningful feedback quickly. And so I'm just going to give you a couple tips for how to get meaningful feedback quickly to students. The first one is to be limited and strategic in what you give feedback on. So especially if you're reading the work of an inexperienced writer and you notice many errors and sometimes it's even hard to get what their point is total, you've got to choose your battles, so you would choose 2 or 3 errors to respond to. And those errors should be about the meaning of the text and maybe 1 or 2 grammatical points as well, but you do want to focus on just 2 or 3 things. Anything more that you focus on, the student isn't going to learn from. They're just going to come away feeling a little overwhelmed by your feedback. Secondly, I would say, since writing, we want to convey that writing is a meaning-making process, I want to, when I read a student's paper, read and respond like a reader. And so I might say comments such as, when I read your thesis as a reader, I expected your essay to be about blank. But what was interesting was that by the second paragraph, you were no longer talking about blank. As a reader, I felt surprised, and then I would give them a strategy for how to stay on. But I want to emphasize to them that I'm responding as a reader to the meaning that they're making with their essay. This third thing that I would say is be specific in your praise. So if you like a line that somebody wrote, you can highlight it and say, I especially, you can say something like, this analysis works especially well because you are making a connection between these two important points. And then I finally would say that it's only fair to comment on an error if you have a strategy to go with it. So if you talk about their essay not being organized, so for instance, when I said to a student, you have a thesis, but then later the body paragraph seems to stray away from that thesis statement, I want to give them a strategy for that. So I'm going to say, remember the outlining that we did in class. Let's go back to your outline and meet with me to make sure that throughout your essay, you're consistently, each body paragraph goes back to your initial point. So just to review my big four ideas about giving feedback to student writing to make it more manageable for you and to make it more helpful for the student is limit what you say, be strategically pick 2 or 3 items to comment back and give feedback on. Give a lot of positive feedback, but make sure that that positive feedback is specific and points to specific choices and things the writer did. Third, respond like a reader. You want them to understand that their writing was a meaning-making process and that you are responding as somebody who read and understood the meaning that they were making or attempting to make. And then finally, you want to, if you're commenting on an error or a mistake they made, only comment on it if you have a strategy for them, a proofreading strategy or a revision strategy or a graphic organizer that would help them to solve that problem. Okay, I hope that you guys are doing well. We look forward to the Google Chats a week from now, and have a good rest of your week. Bye.